when I say the word Chicanoism, it talks about all of that history, all of the history of being a migrant worker and being born here in the United States, and also like the civil rights movement. So I do feel it ties me into a larger population that oftentimes um, is confused, is made into one, as if we're only one sabor, but we are many different, we have many different types of salsas. Hay salsas dulces, hay salsa verde, hay varios diferentes tipos de salsa, como hay varios diferentes tipos de latinos.
Our voices, stories, and experiences are powerful and need to be shared to create a more inclusive world. Welcome to Hablemos, conversations with talented humans about inclusion, leadership, and purpose. I'm your host, Carolina Veira, finance and business strategist, DEI champion, and proud Hispanic Star ambassador and leader of the Hispanic Star Miami Hub. This episode features my conversation with Araceli Esparza, founder of Wisconsin Mujer, where she creates strategies that have an impact on marginalized communities. Her mission is to break the isolation of Latinas in the Midwest.
How are you, Araceli?
I'm doing really good, thank you. It's rainy over here in Wisconsin, but we still got some sunshine this afternoon. So
it's raining here in Miami too, so I totally understand, but it's it's still a good day to have you here and to host you and to learn more about you. Tell us more about you, by the way. You are the CEO of Wisconsin Mujer, but who is Araceli? Share with us.
I wear a lot of hats. I think I'm definitely a connector. That's my natural talent, is to network with people. I'm unafraid to meet you. And I'm a creative. I think outside of the box. I'm always about outreach and looking out for who is not in the room, whose voices, whose presence needs to be here. And hopefully I'm connected to them. And if not, I'm going to find out who they are and get them in this room because if we're talking about certain populations and peoples, I'm definitely that connector and looking at just different strategies of how to outreach and how to be as inclusive as possible.
And you also, other than being a business entrepreneur, where do you come from? Like, what's your heritage? What's your family? How does your family look like?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. My family came over in the early 1800s during the Bracero program from Mexico. We're originally from Guanajuato. Yes, the German tunnel city of Mexico. Gals, you need to go and visit. It's a beautiful city. It has all these. We have the smallest mummy in the world. That's just like a nice little FYI. Yes, I know it's really interesting story. But so my family came over like I said, in the early 1800s, and they were mainly migrant workers. And my grandmother is the one generation that ended up staying. So prior to her, it was just pretty much flow. And then she came up during the 1970s and, Piscoto, like all through the United States and the Midwest. And then she pretty much landed a job career here in Madison and Wisconsin. And she fell in love with the nature of this area and just really enjoyed the seasons. She was really somebody that enjoyed seasons. My family now consists of myself, my husband, my guinea pig, my dog, and my 2 kids. I have a college kid, a middle schooler as well.
Wow.
And yeah, my extended family lives here as well in the Midwest. And we're all creatives and entrepreneurs in our own right. And it's we took from what my grandmother and my mom did, and we were like, you know what, we're going to work for ourselves, because they face so much discrimination, so much isolation in like the 70s and 80s, being one of the very first families to really settle in Madison. So yeah. And then after that has been, I think a lot about my trajectory has been also education. Once I went into higher education, it became easier. Life became easier for me to see perspectives and differences and include and having that breadth of inclusion.
And you also work on that diversity, equity, and inclusion field,
Yeah.
and you're an expert, an SME at that in that area, and you identify yourself more than a Latino, as a Latina, you identify yourself as a Chicana, and I would love for you to explain to all of us, uh, to you in your own words, what the difference is between being a Latina and being a Chicana, and are they separate and distinct, or can we mix them up a little bit, use a little bit of sazon, and we're all a family, or tell us what's the
I think
difference?
we're all a family. And no, it's different, it's nothing different than being called Boricua, or New Yorkin, I
Mhm.
love, I think when I think about being Chicano and being Chicanismo and Chicanismo, it's really about the intersectionality of immigration, nationality, but when it cuts here in the United States. So being a first generation Mexican American, uh, you hear so many different labels being thrown at you. And I just named one, which is maybe now being considered antiquated, right? In 2021, when we have other labels like Latinx and so forth. And uh, I use it as myself. I find it to be identifying as somebody who was born and raised here of Mexican descent. And that makes me different than being Latino, but it also, I feel, embraces that too. And it also speaks to the resistance of, the civil rights movement of the time of during Cesar Chavez, the struggles there as coming as a granddaughter of a migrant worker. I'm very much conscientious about that. My grandmother and my mother both were migrant workers here in Wisconsin as well. And so some of my poetry talks about that. And I certainly, have great ties to land and was always taught semi how to do things like that, like, gardening and so forth, and raising small animals as well. So those were things that were like put in my life. And so I think that when I say the word Chicanoism, it talks about all of that history, all of the history of being a migrant worker and being born here in the United States, and also like the civil rights movement. So I feel it ties me into a larger population that oftentimes um, is confused, is made into one, as if we're only one sabor, but we are many different, we have many different types of salsas. Hay salsas dulces, hay salsas verdes, hay varios diferentes tipos de salsa, como hay varios diferentes tipos de latinos.
No, exactly. And you also talk about being obviously being having a different salsa with a Midwest flavor as well.
Yes, right.
Cuéntanos de qué se trata ese saborcito del Midwest.
I mean, much like, because we have farmer, migrant worker roots. I mean, I was brought up with the ideology, much like many of us in the Midwest, being very friendly with folks, networking with people, pulling yourself by your bootstraps, and never asking for help.
Mm. Now, what do you
Sorry.
learn about that?
I know, right? That's kind of like the undercurrent a little bit about being a Midwesterner is like, we're really okay, but we're really not okay.
Right?
And that is, I thought it really, I think, aligned even probably with my grandmother and my parents, to have some of those Midwestern ideals to be part of first gen immigrant reality. A lot of the folks that are in the Midwest, of the culture that we have here in the Midwest, comes from first generation immigrants, primarily from Europe and what have you. But we also have a Native American culture here too. So it's a real nice blend of a lot of different. I feel like when I'm talking about the Midwest, I'm really trying to acknowledge all of it. I'm trying to really acknowledge all of it, the beauty, the good, and the bad of it all. But certainly some of those entrepreneurial roots, I feel, have a lot to do with being in the Midwest too.
In your role as an entrepreneur and as a business owner, what do you think defines you, or what is your purpose? Like, what are you trying to accomplish with your company?
Right, Midwest, for sure. Wisconsin Mujer, I started as a consulting agency for many nonprofits in the area, but also we started a smaller project where we curate news that focuses on Latinos in the southern parts of Wisconsin, mainly here in Dane County in my area. And also like Chicago or Milwaukee, I'll curate news and we'll just like, it's there. I'm not a news channel, but I want to highlight the various different women of color, Latina women that are doing stuff in our tri area. And that's what we do. You know, we are trying to help other Latinas gain knowledge and gain their own expand their own platform. But the mission of it is to breaking the isolation of Latinas living in the Midwest, really providing that platform, that reflection that we often we don't see ourselves. And if like we were in the news, like some of us are just not, we're so busy, we're not in tune. So I was like, you know what, why don't we put it all together in one channel? I'm out there anyways because of my work and my freelance work. I'm like, I'm out there anyways getting news stories on us. Let me just, I'll just share it with y'all. You just follow me and they'll be fine. Because a lot of us, we don't know. We're like, oh, did you hear about so-and-so was in this, she was highlighted here. Did you hear about, no, I didn't see that. So that's a lot of what I would hear many years ago. And now with social media and so forth, I just, it just naturally came together and really wanting to reflect these beautiful stories, these beautiful women, ordinary women, like my mother, my grandmother, who have, who triumphed over their challenges of being in a different country. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I mean, you're building community for this segment of people who are obviously underrepresented, and you're opening doors for them in a way, right?
And a way of acceptance too, because here's the thing, because we don't have a lot of reflection of who we are in the Midwest, or say in rural Wisconsin, you might be in Rio, Wisconsin, or in Cove, Wisconsin, or wherever you are in Wisconsin, and there you might not have a channel, that has cable access that's in Spanish. You might not even know how to heat up a tortilla properly on the stove. That's okay. I'm told, like, I get tired of like the backlash of like people who don't speak Spanish, who aren't Latino enough, like all of that kind of backlash. I think myself, I got frustrated with. I am quite bilingual. You've already heard me speak Spanish, but that's not my expectation for someone else. And in fact, I am okay with translating every single word I say in Spanish to somebody who is of Latino descent and needs that from me. I'm fine with that. In fact, the support group that I run digitally, a Facebook support group, we've been running for 7 years, and it's called Vida, Comida, and Salud. There are women there that are only monolingual English, and there are monolingual Spanish speakers. But I always have the content either in both languages or only in one and then only in another. But we, with social media, you can translate those posts easily. So I was like, so for that, I was like, great. So each one of my populations can still access the information that we have and
still be connected.
And still be connected. Exactly. Language should not be our barrier, nor should it be our hindrance or the way we measure each other's identity. That's not what makes being a Latino. And Latinos or Latina or being a Chicana is like really from your heart. And it's like your pursuit of of honoring your own culture, of like honoring what makes you unique in this state, and yeah.
Absolutely. I agree 100% with you, because what makes us Latinos, like you said, it's not necessarily language, it's a component. Yeah, I mean, we can use it to our advantage and celebrate it, but let's celebrate our culture, our heritage, where we come from, our dreams, our stories, just like what we're doing. I know that you're doing it on your end. We are doing it here as well on the Hispanic side and on our own platforms. So we're celebrating each other, and that's the way that we elevate our community ultimately. I'm
loving that Hispanic toolkit. You guys already are thinking about Hispanic Heritage Month, and we're like 3 months away.
I'm planning Hispanic Heritage Month. I'm hoping that you are. So it's great that you mentioned that, because it's available for all companies, all organizations, for anyone, right? To use and to celebrate the Hispanics within your organizations. And even if it's not for a company or you have a small business, you can print stuff, you can elevate your family, your friends, your relatives, or send like an email with, hey, we're celebrating you. How cool is that? I think there's many ways, right? It's just about being resourceful with the information that we have. But yes, we're celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, September 15th through October 15th.
Hi everybody, hola a todos, this is Carolina. I personally would like to invite you to be part of Hablemos by heading over to carolinaveira.com/hablemos to sign up today. And while you're there, take a look at my DEI initiatives and discover how we can all be agents of change by creating sustainable projects through a DEI lens, and by sharing and celebrating our authentic stories and experiences while leading with compassion and empathy.
Now, I see where you're coming from with Wisconsin Mujer and what you're building here, which is beautiful. Now, tell us a little more about why are you doing it? Like, is there something that really made you think that way, or that shape you into the person that you are today? And then you decided, oh, okay, this is the person that I'm gonna be, or that I've always been, and I never knew.
So when I think about like how, and I talk a lot about mi abuela, and las abuelas de nuestra cultura are so important. The grandmothers of our culture are so important to because we don't like write instructions down. We don't write diaries. Okay. Like generations ago, they didn't do that. It's
Right.
all very oral traditions. And like so I'm just gonna partake a story. My grandmother is like was in paz descanse. God rest her soul. She was like less than, she was like 4'10" on a good day. On a
Oh
good
my
day, she was like
goodness.
very tiny, muy chiquita. This woman didn't
Well,
know how to drive.
I
She
bet
doesn't know how to.
it was something else,
Oh
huh?
yeah, she was. And she doesn't know how to drive. She didn't know how to drive. Okay, so like she's gone around this whole country. Gone around this whole country, ended up at a Big Ten university, working there for so many years. She worked in the humanities building, made for a lot of pictures. But this is the thing. It's like when she would have me travel with her to Mexico a lot. So we'd go down a lot, twice a year or something like that. And I was her like translator and her interpreter and stuff. And I would see like her feet would have touched the ground. She was so tiny when she would be sitting. And the dignity that she had was just like so immense for me. It was so special and immense for me, because she also knew how to read and write. So that's something very unique from somebody born in the Depression era, and especially of Mexican descent, to know how to read and write. So that was definitely, I mean, I can tell you that's the force of what got us out of poverty, was the fact that my grandmother knew how to read and write. So I think
Wow.
that's what inspires me, is to continue and continue highlighting other stories, continue readership, curating what's good readership, curating these stories of identity and love for yourself, for your culture, because that's how we recover. That's how we recover. And that's how we break the isolation here of living in the Midwest, is sharing our stories. And so if that's really what motivates me and like keeps me in this, keeps me in the state, keeps me doing what I'm doing in the community, and offering that platform, but also offering that mentorship for other Latinas and other brown and Black women.
That's beautiful. I mean, our abuelas, like you said, our grandmas are so important in everybody's lives. I feel like I know the feeling, because I feel very proud about my grandma, my mom, my aunts. I mean, the women in our lives, in our families, are so
See,
important. And I think that's one thing that we all have in common, right? The women that are so strong and that guide and lead the way in a way. So I'm happy that you share that, and thank you for sharing that. Now, so you've talked about all your work and what you do it, your grandma. What's next for you? Like, what is your plan? I know that you like to write, and you like to obviously mentor people. Like, what's next for Araceli?
well, what I'm working on next are twofold. I mean, we talked a little bit about healing and reflection, identity. All of those things are things that percolate in me. I'm working right now with our local library system and a series of wellness activities that are like, because we're coming out of COVID now, public libraries, public spaces, at least in my state, are opening up again. But how do we get our community to trust and come back? And so I'm chaperoning this like and kind of ambassadoring, being an ambassador of all these events that are going to happen around our city that are focused on wellness. So we're contracting with Black and Latina and Indigenous and Asian American women to be practitioners so they can share their practice of wellness with us. Could be yoga, could be we had a weaver, a Guatemalan weaver last weekend. So we have all these different women that are coming and showing their wellness practice to us, and we're having these community conversations where we're assessing some of that information. So that's on a very micro level. On a macro level, though, I'm developing Midwest Mujeres collective. So expanding on the project, getting more formal on our curriculum development and intentional and our organizational development. And I'm also sitting on a brand new board of a artist collective that we just started here in the southern parts of Wisconsin. And yeah, I could keep on going.
I know you're very busy. You're very busy.
Yeah, we get a little bit busy because a lot of times, being of the generation that I am part of, I'm almost seen as like an elder in my community now. And like a young elder. I call myself like a baby elder yet because I'm not there yet. I don't feel like I'm going to be there yet, but I'm kind of taken from my Indigenous sisters of calling myself a baby elder, because I do feel like prior to me, it was really like kind of separate, probably, it was always either like only hablamos en español or we're only going to do these things. And so I'm really about breaking open. Like when I was growing up, my grandma only wanted me to be, I mean, I love her grandmother, so she wanted me to be a bilingual secretary. For her, that was like, bam,
right.
I was like top, I was like, okay, you're gonna arrive and like you'll be set if you're a bilingual secretary. But that is so limiting. I'm honestly, I can't think of many people in my area, and I know this is different for you're in Miami, there's people on the West Coast, East Coast, people even in Milwaukee, but in my area it is very unheard of having a Latina in communications. It's very unheard of for having a Latina that's interested in digital spaces. It's just not here. And so we have us doing all kinds of things that are outside of where socially constructed norms want us to be, either just being teachers or lawyers. Nothing wrong with those, but there has to be more for Latinos, and we need to have that representation out there for us. So that's where my mission meets my work, is like not only representing that, but also helping chaperone a new generation into these careers by pointing them to the right people to develop those aspirations.
And I love that you mentioned about breaking down those barriers, because I feel that obviously there's barriers that we're always working on breaking down, but the ones that come from the way that we were raised, or the ones that we put on ourselves as well, those are the toughest ones to break, right? Break down, especially the ones that where we're telling ourselves that maybe we should do this instead of what we're really passionate about. So when you're mentoring these women, how does the session work? Like, do you talk to them about this? When you mentor, what are the areas that you talk about, or the soft?
We're really wanting to find out their soft skills. Where do they lack in their soft skills? Is it networking? Is it digital presence? Is it creating good copy for your digital presence? Branding, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Is it funding for your entrepreneurial dream? Perhaps they want to become a nonprofit. Nonprofits here in Dane County, we have very many of them. We have a lot of nonprofits here. In fact, more nonprofits in this county than anywhere else in the country, apparently. Wow. Somebody has told me those statistics before. But to say it's a very popular business model here is an understatement. It really is. So we help other Latinos understand that game, like how do I do an RFP? How do I get a sponsorship? How do I develop a platform that looks, real and legitimate? Who should I pick to be part of my board and my advisory board? Do I need an advisory board? Who else are selling? And so a lot of times people come with me with those questions, and we help them. And and I have other women that are behind me, next to me, who are helping me with those referrals and references. But there's definitely that process. I'm really wanting to see what it is that they want to do. And, you don't want to force it too, honestly, that's what I've seen the most when it's like, if I'm telling someone, say they're writing for us for our newsletter, I'm telling them what to write. It's almost more difficult than just saying, you write what you want to write. Don't. And then from there, I'll understand more their passion, their voice, and then go from there, which is why I really enjoyed the anthology, because you guys really helped us to say our truth at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just talking about that before we got on
Mm-hmm.
here on this live, like how the book itself is a calling card. And I would love for them to, and I have invited quite a few of women in my own circle to submit to anthologies like this. So when I started writing, like 10, 15 years ago, getting submitted and, submitting into an anthology and getting published was a very, wow, it's huge.
Right.
Huge.
And I
huge.
feel that it still is. I mean, and to your point, it's
absolutely.
so important. It's so important to share their stories. And I applaud you for those who are brave enough to share with the rest of the world, because it's needed. It's what we need to understand where we come from, where we go, what's possible to us, right? Maybe we don't need to hear all stories, but there's this one story that will change our lives, because it just opens the door for so many opportunities. So yeah, I agree with you 100% about sharing stories, and that's why I also love this anthology. And I just want to remind everybody, the reason recently what we're going to be doing is connecting with the authors included in book number 1 in volume 1, to learn about them and to learn about their stories, and to learn why they wrote what they wrote, but also to learn about their businesses, if they're entrepreneurs like Araceli, or if they work for a company and they work on social impact, or they work on HR or marketing, social media, anything, because we want to learn that. I feel that we need to share those stories. We need to learn about what it took for them to be where they are. Or don't you agree, Araceli?
Oh my gosh.
What you're doing.
I pick up this book, I open it wherever, and I'm instantly inspired. And it's such short reads too. I mean, none of us wrote more than like 2 pages, guys. Like, you are going to get your fix just opening anywhere in this. And it's all, the careers just run the gamut, everything from like presidential staff all the way to like engineers,
Right.
scientists, first Latina scientists are, it's interesting. It's really amazing to see all of the firsts, and that we're still claiming first positions in certain careers, in certain fields. Is just, it boggles the mind, because you're like, it's 2021. You would have thought by now we would have had, XYZ by now, but it's not. We're still having a lot of firsts. I know I'm the first in my family not to be a grandmother at 45. So I'm like, yay, I get to actually enjoy.
Not being a secretary, like you mentioned, right?
Right. Nothing wrong with that.
Congratulations on that.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
Now, if anybody, any women out there or men or anyone who wants to connect with you and learn about you, learn more about what you're doing, either locally or nationally, how you can expand those ideas and bring them to their cities, their towns, how do they get a hold of you?
Certainly go to my website, www.araceliesparza.com. You'll see, I just redid it, revamped it.
I saw it.
I checked it out. And new. It's very pops. It was produced by women-owned businesses. So that's something to brag about as well. And people are going to see there, what are we offering right now? We're offering strategic workshops on DEI outreach, primarily focusing on frontline providers. And the reason why I think this is so important, especially in a state like mine, where most of the service providers are of a different culture than the people they are serving, it is super important to have diversity, equity, inclusion embedded at all parts of the organization. And frontline workers are oftentimes, highest turnaround. And so we go through it with an emotional intelligent lens, and we talk about strategies that they can do to strengthen their anti-bias service delivery until it's like second nature. So you'll see that offering. And so, yeah, when you're talking about, let's bring it to a national level, I'm definitely about bringing that to a national level and helping organizations keep their promise for inclusion. And I'm learning here too. My lived experience gave me such a perspective on it, especially being an interpreter, a young interpreter, a young translator at the age of 7. It gave me great perspective on inclusion and so forth. But it also it's a little bit of sometimes it can be a hindrance in the sense that you want things to go so fast. You want things to change so quickly. And this takes time. This work takes time.
Absolutely.
Carolina.
Absolutely. Change
Because
is a slow process. I know we're used to, oh, we want everything right now, but change is a slow process, and it's about, what do they say? It's about the adventure, or it's about the path rather than just focusing on each of the wins. We celebrate the wins, but we also have to enjoy the ride, right? Because the change is going to take a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of community involvement. It's worth it, but it's worth it, obviously, but we have to enjoy what it takes to get to that point.
And not feel discouraged of it taking so much time and all the barriers that you might find in the way of your journey, in the way to this mission of, we're all working for social equality across all identities. And it is a journey. I know when I was reading the history books, in high school, I'm like, oh, great, it's going to happen. Like by the time I graduate high school, by the time I graduate college, it's going to be okay. No, no, but, and it's definitely, we've made a lot of strides.
Mm-hmm.
We've made a lot of strides locally. I have seen, Pride Month has been amazing here locally, but we can't pretend that we've always had it like this. We've got to acknowledge the past of.
We can see it. 2019, 2020, it was nothing like that. There were some celebrations, but I feel that this year it has been tremendous. And I expect to see the same for when we celebrate Latinos, and I expect to see the same when we celebrate Black History Month. That's the progress that we want to see, and that's what we're here to celebrate together, right?
Exactly. Yeah. No, yes, I'm here for it. I'm here for the long run.
I know, me too. I'm patiently waiting and working towards that change.
Right. I love these type of platforms and the work I'm doing. We're just here to encourage you in that journey. We want to encourage everyone in their journey to know that your voice is needed, and we're waiting. We're waiting.
Yes,
we're waiting for it. Yeah,
100%. I agree with you, and I think that's what we're all aligned. And it's a pleasure always to connect with people whose purpose is so aligned with what we're trying to accomplish as a community. So thank you so much for sharing your voice, sharing your message, your experiences with us. I truly appreciate it. And I speak on behalf of the whole Hispanic Star community. Thank you for lending your voice tonight. Appreciate it very much.
You're very welcome. And I'm appreciative of your platform as well. Gracias. Que tengan buenas noches.
Gracias. Thank you so much. I know. Buenas tardes, buenos días, whatever time it is. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for being part of this conversation. And if you have any questions for Araceli or myself, please email us, send us a message. We're here for you. So thank you. And don't forget Hispanic Heritage Month. Start preparing now. Go to hispanicstar.org/toolkit. There's a lot of information there. We can't say anything that it was impossible because it's right there. So thank you so much. Have a great day.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast today, and also send me a DM at Carolina Veira. Share the love, share the comments, share the thoughts. Special thanks to our partners at the Hispanic Star and Catuna Digital Marketing. Gracias mil. Thank you for listening, everybody, and we'll be back next time with a new episode of Hablemos. Ciao.